Our next guest is a judge and boxing referee who has over 24 years of experience. Welcome back to Title Unboxed, Jack Reiss.
Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Jack, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Title Unboxed.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Always appreciate being here.
Well, I was looking forward to it because last time was so educational and informative, not just for me, but I think for our listeners and viewers. It's great for them to get athletes, coaches, to get a 360-degree perspective of boxing. If they know what your job is, it maybe helps them do their job a little better.
Absolutely. It's wonderful that we could do that because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what things are and aren't. And hopefully we can clear some of those up today.
Right, and we live in a day and age when you don't just have pay-per-view. We've got social media where people post clips, and there's just a lot of perspectives and opinions about any certain situation that happens in boxing.
Yeah, there's a lot more scrutiny, a lot more eyes on boxing, a lot more eyes on the referees and the decisions that we make, as well as the fighters and what they're doing and not. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are making these comments don't have a clue. But let's try to give them a clue today.
There you go. Exactly. So I want to talk about the oldest topics in boxing. Boxing's always had controversy from the beginning of time. So I want to break down some of those controversies and how they would apply, or what your perspective is on certain things that have happened.
Sure.
So I want to start with the most recent fight, which is just last month. Alexander Usyk fought Daniel Dubois. It's a fairly competitive fight. Fifth round comes around. Dubois lands a right hand to the body. Louis Pabon rules it a knockdown, or rules it a low blow, and gives Usyk, I don't know how many minutes he took, but he gave him up to 5 minutes to recover, correct?
Yes.
So what do you think? Low blow, not low blow? What it constitutes a low blow, and how does a fighter know that going into the fight?
Well, what I really like to do, rather than commenting on the skills and abilities of another official, because that it's not professional and stuff like that.
For sure.
I would like to identify what a low blow is and what a low blow isn't. But also, even if he did it incorrectly, it's a referee's discretion at that moment of what he's seeing. So I'm not one to doubt it. Let me say this: over the years, a low blow, the terms that we use for a low blow, belt line, trunk line, waistband, they've all been convoluted. And if you go back to the early days of boxing, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, all the fighters wore shorter trunks, just like the basketball players in the NBA wore shorter trunks. And at that time, they all had a 1-inch elastic waistband.
Right.
So that waistband sat on the iliac crest on the top of the hip line. And I'll give you a great thing right now, and all your fans can understand it. Would you appease me a moment, Doug?
It's all yours.
Okay, please. Simon says, put your hands on your hips. Put your hands on your hips. Now, with your two fingers that are out, slide your hands around so your two fingers touch.
Okay.
Where are those fingers in relation to your belly button?
It's about 1 inch below my belly button.
And mine could be 2 inches. Some guys are 4 inches. You can't use the belly button as the rule because they're not all the same. But what is the same is that the pelvic girdle, which the hips are part of the pelvic girdle, the top of the hips are always the same in a regular, average, normal human being. That won't change, but the belly button changes all the time. So additionally, that's where a normal person like you and I and everyone else wears our belt. That's the belt line. Why it changed to all this stuff, it's just happened over the years. But especially now with fighters and the styles are different, they wear 5-inch waistbands, and
Yeah.
sometimes the waistband, you can't see the belly button 90% of the time on the trunks that people are wearing these days. And some of them there is extremely high. I've done fights where it's covered the bottom of their lats. So it really makes it difficult for the fans who don't understand what this is, and some of the referees who haven't been paying particular attention to anatomy and what the rule is. But it's the hip line, from the top of the hip line to the top of the hip line. They don't have this problem in MMA because all the MMA fighters wear a little 1-inch, real small shorts, so they can't be grabbed and used against them. And they're all 3/4 of an inch to 1-inch elastic waistband. It's non-existent in MMA. So that's the hip line. So then in this particular fight, you had Usyk bending because he realized the blow was coming in, and he scrunched up to make it, to protect himself. So, let the fans decide based on what I just said, if it was low or not. But I do got to say this. I believe I would have counted him, and I believe he would have got up because somebody was counting him.
Yep.
That's what I believe. But I wasn't there. I don't know. And I can't fault Louis Pavone. He did what he thought was right at the moment. And I'd love to hear his perspective on it now, though, when you look back a couple of weeks later. But that's it. That's the hip line is the belt line. So let the fans choose what they want.
Yeah, well, and everything's easier in retrospect. It's easy to go back and look at something and go, oh, that I should have made this call. I should have made that call.
I've got a bunch of those. I can tell you truthfully, you do a lot of fights. There's always going to be a few you wish you could take back.
Yeah. So does that weigh on you as a referee, knowing that, in essence, I mean, if that had not been called the rule of the low blow, Dubois could have come back, or he might have got counted out. Who knows? He might have got counted, reached a 10 count before he could get up. That changes the guy's trajectory. It changes his career. Does that weigh on you as a referee, knowing that weight, that burden is on you in some instances?
Well, what plays upon me is that we all get painted with the same paintbrush. Yeah. When you get a and I'm not saying in this fight, but in multiple fights, there are referees that don't know what they're looking at, and they make these horrendous calls. And I get painted, and me and my cohorts who work really, really hard to get it right. We do the best we can to do what's best for boxing and get it right. We get painted with the same paintbrush as a guy who takes this as a casual part-time job for himself.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me. That's what weighs upon me.
Yeah. A huge responsibility, though, too. You got the fighter's health and well-being, not just the outcome of the fight, but sometimes his life.
His career as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No. I mean, obviously safety is number one, and 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, the decisions we're talking about right now, 95% of the time, it's about the career. It's not about the health and safety. 5% of the time, a referee, and I'm making these numbers up from what I see, 5% of the time or so, referees let something go too long, or they stop something too quick, and it affects, their health and safety. But what we're really talking about is affecting their future career, and that's what you addressed.
Right. Well, and that takes us right into our next fight. This past May, Rolly Romero fought, what was the guy's name? Ishmael Barroso. Barroso was kind of taking it to him. He was winning most of the exchanges. In the third round, he dropped Rolly Romero. Fight went on. Tony Weeks, Romero was able to trap Barroso against the ropes. Landed 4 to 5 punches that missed or glanced. Tony Weeks then stepped in and stopped the fight. And Barroso was ahead on all scorecards at that point. So, and Tony Weeks said afterwards, again, I don't expect you to get into the semantics of it, but he said afterwards that part of his reasoning for stopping the fight was Barroso's age. He's 40, 41, something like that. And that's why he stopped the fight. Should that be a factor in your when you decide a fight, when you see a fighter in a situation like that? Does age, history, how much of that plays into the decisions you're making moment to moment?
it plays into my decision making terribly. That's not the right word. It has a great impact on me, and I'll give you an example. You can't. Father Time is undefeated. It's just you can't beat him. So I'm always wondering about the old veteran that's going back in there to get a payday. We're looking for that one last shot of glory. But I'm also looking at the fighter's record, what he did in his last 5 to 10 fights. What weight is he fighting at? Has he won in that weight class before? What was the time and distance between the last few fights? What did he weigh in at the rules meeting and weigh in? And what did he come in weighing in the next day? All that stuff plays upon me because those one singular thing isn't important, but all of them together gives you a picture of the fighter. If he's lost 8 of his last 10 fights, I'm looking to get that guy out quicker. If he's 40 years old, everyone should be also. Sometimes we pull him out too quick. In fact, I'll tell you a fast story. I had a fight recently where the old veteran was great, fighting a young and upcoming beast. And I was concerned for the veteran, but the veteran was throwing back wonderfully, defending themselves, had a puncher's chance. But after like the 5th or 6th round of this 10-round fight, the fighter couldn't win anymore mathematically.
Yeah.
And it was turning, and I'm going to quote Andy Foster, my boss. In California, we don't sanction beatings. We sanction competition. So after 5 rounds where that fighter lost all the rounds, they can no longer win mathematically without scoring a knockdown or a knockout. And if they're taking visible physical damage and the other person's overwhelming them, it turns into a competitive, non-competitive fight. And there's one thing that I'm getting aggravated thinking about this right now. That's how bad it is, Doug. Yeah. There are idiot, moron commentators, and I hope they know who they are and I'm talking about, okay, that don't understand the difference between activity and effectiveness. Throwing arm punches is not effective. That doesn't mean it's a competitive fight.
Yeah.
So there comes a point in time where it's no longer competitive, but somebody might think it's competitive, and we have to start thinking about getting that fighter out of there by going into the corners and finding out, hey, coach, you're with her 6-8 weeks in a row. You know that fighter better than me. What do you think? Stuff like that, bringing in the doctor and letting everybody know you're concerned. But in this fight that I was talking to you about, the trainer just asked me to be patient. He said, I got this, Jack. And I've worked with him 100 times. Just be patient, and I trust the guy. He's a level-headed, great trainer. Yeah. And when the fight was over, I saw him, and I said, how come you let the fight go so long? And you know what he said to me, Doug? This is what the fans, they don't even consider this. I wanted the fighter to know it's over. I don't want the fighter thinking they were robbed, the referee screwed me, and coming back and fighting again. The fighter was 42. And they need to know they're done. So sometimes, even though you want to get them out, you got to try to let it go to a more natural conclusion. Yeah. So the fighter knows, I gave it my best shot, I'm done. Because if not, they go back in the gym, take more pounding, and go in the ring and potentially get killed.
Yeah, do more long-term damage.
And I was biting my nails, and I was patient, but I totally got the person through.
Unfortunately, I mean, you bring up an interesting thing. Sometimes the commentators feed the controversy because they don't understand what they're watching either.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's too bad. So let's go back then even further in time. This is a little freaky because it was 12 years ago to when Floyd Mayweather fought Victor Ortiz. A little bit of controversy surrounding that. In the 4th round, Ortiz was. He was making a good accounting for himself, but not landing clean because Floyd is Floyd. Missing several punches, got frustrated, headbutted Floyd Mayweather. Of course, Joe Cortez stopped the action, deducted a point from Victor Ortiz, and then it got a little muddy. It got it into kind of a gray area. When the fight resumed, it wasn't clear that if Joe Cortez told them to start fighting again, or what happened? Because he looked over to the timekeeper to make sure that they could start the clock again. While that was happening, Floyd Mayweather unloaded I think a 3-2 on a hook, a right hand on Victor Ortiz, knocked him out. What is the proper protocol in that kind of a situation that prevents that kind of a thing from happening?
Well, let me say this. Joe Cortez is one of the greatest refs of all time. Obviously,
Right.
International Boxing Hall of Fame referee. He was at the tail end of his career. And, listen, none of us, look at the equipment sitting in your room right now that you're using. Things changed over the last 40 years.
For sure.
We have the ability to talk the way we're talking right now and be on camera and all that stuff. And Joe was reffing the way he knew how to ref and what he expected. And the world had changed. First of all, no one expected Victor Ortiz to, especially when he was doing pretty good for himself, to intentionally headbutt Floyd.
Yeah.
And then for him to continue to say he was sorry.
Yeah, he got a little overly affectionate.
Yeah, I'd say so. So there was confusion between the timekeeper and Joe, and he took his eyes off the two of them for one moment, and Victor came together again with Floyd, and Floyd hit him with a legal cheap shot. Joe had called time in, and then he got distracted by something that the timekeeper said, took his eyes off the guys for 1 second, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was there for that fight. It was surprising, but, and like you say, it was a cheap shot, but a legal shot at the same time.
Yeah, and I got to tell you something. Anyone who doesn't, we didn't speak before this except 2 minutes ago before the thing started. And anyone who doesn't know the fights that you brought up really is a referee, is a casual boxing fan. They really shouldn't be in this, because I got great lessons from that fight, and all the fights that we're going to talk about, I learned great lessons from them to carry with me. So and what happened with Joe set the tone for how we handle ourselves now. It's stop, time, put them in the neutral corner. The inspectors should be coming up on the ring, taking control of the fighter till the referee says the word box, and they should be staying there, not getting together anymore ever again until you are ready to say box. You finish with the timekeeper. Additionally, I will always be in the center of the ring between them. I will never step back until I've checked both of them. I'm ready to go when I say box. That came out of that fight, because back then you didn't expect something like that to happen. And in fact, I try to tell the amateur USA boxing referees, we got quite a few that have shown some real great promise. They're trying to maybe break into the big league there. And they think, I've done 500 amateur fights. And I explain to them the power, the ferociousness, the intent, and the speed, not the speed, and everything is so much different in the pros, because this is for people's careers. You're not trying to outpoint each other. The speed in the amateurs is sometimes greater because they're punching for points and they're throwing 10 at a time, just want to tap, tap, tap. They don't care about thump. Where in the pros, it's thump. It's the hurt game. So it's a step up. It's like they get out of their first few fights and you go, welcome to the NFL. They do that.
Well, the amount of knockouts you see in the amateurs compared to the pros is a fraction. I mean,
and cuts and injuries.
Yeah.
It's just totally different.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the Ortiz thing, I mean, he broke the cardinal rule himself of not protecting himself at all times. I mean, even in the gym, I always train my fighters, keep your hands up. Even when you're sparring, if the bell rings, don't drop your hands right away. Get in the habit of keeping them up until the action, there's no longer an engagement. Then walk back to the corner, drop your hands, and feel a sense of safety.
I totally agree with you. And I'm going to take it one step further. That impression that it made on me is in the dressing room.
Yeah.
In my pre-fight instructions, I tell the fighters, meeting throughout this fight. Just because I'm talking doesn't mean you have to stop fighting. So protect yourself at all times. I might be addressing the other fighter and telling him to let you go. You got free reign to keep punching. Never drop your guard and look at me because you hear me talking. And that came out of that fight.
Oh, really?
So now, if they do it, it's on them. It's not on me.
So you kind of alluded to it, but I would assume you guys have regular conversations behind the scenes. You see a fight and you go, "Oh my gosh, did you see what that guy did? What that ref did? What those fighters did?" And then that's part of that learning process.
1,000%. And let me tell you, this craft cannot of refereeing cannot be learned by reading a book and doing it on your own. If you're the kind of ref that the only feedback you're getting is the mirror, you're getting feedback from an idiot. I'm just telling you, you need to have peers that are on the same level as you dissecting fights on TV. You're not looking at it as and saying, oh, that referee screwed up. You're looking at the situation. It's not about the ref, it's about the situation. And it's all about saying, wow, if that happened to me, what could I have done different or better? It's that simple. Additionally, you got to have people that have had, many, many years in the business, but not just many, many years, lots of fights. There's guys in smaller states or counties or whatever that been in 30 years, but they only got 200 fights. So you got to try to find someone that has the experience, that has made the mistakes that come along with those experiences, and can say, "Oh no, you never do it that way. Here's why. This is what could happen to you." You know what I mean, Doug? So
Yeah.
you can't do this alone, and you've got to do the peer stuff, and you got to do the mentor stuff, and you also really have to be a student of boxing and really watch a lot of fights from the referee's standpoint, not a fan's, when you're watching those on TV. And to be better these days is 1,000 times easier than it was when I first started my career because of social media.
Sure.
I could find every fight that's on TV somehow or somewhere, and even the ones that are off because they're being streamed. So when I hear of an incident, I either try to find it, I make phone calls, I go to YouTube, and I have a library for the class that I teach, Soul Arbiter. We just had a class this last weekend. My cup you got there, beautiful, our cup. So I've got an extensive library, at least 900 to 1,000 clips of fights of things happening. So what we like to do in the class is we'll show the situation in real time, we'll stop it. We'll talk about the philosophy so people understand actually what they're looking at. And then after that, if you understand what you're looking at and why you're supposed to do what you do, the why creates the how. It's very easy on how to fix it when you know what you're looking at. So we always show the fight, the why, or the what and the why, and then the how, and then we show it in slow motion so the guys really get it. Then we get up and we do the mechanic together. Then we put them in the ring on the third day and we put that scenario in there and we let them do it live fast. And if they've done it right, great. If not, we slow it down, we correct it, and we let them do it again so they develop that neural pathway.
Yeah. And to that point, you mentioned amateur boxing referees versus pro. Maybe we've talked about this before. This is kind of a diversion, but I think it's an interesting point. What does that process look like? What does that progression look like? Being an amateur judge or a referee, and moving on to the pro ranks. What does that progression look like? How does that happen for a young guy?
Well, I really think it's important to be an amateur referee because even though they're a bit different, one's the hurt game and one's the point game, basically. And I'm saying that generally. They're both trying to hurt each other in both things. The benefits of being in the ring with fighters and handling situations, even though you're handling them a little bit differently, your movement and your ability to focus on the fight without the distractions, your ability to watch punches, your positioning, and a whole slew of other things you bring with you into that ring. And we had some people the other day in the class who never did it before, and we had some amateurs and we had top-notch pros in there, and you could see the difference. So there's definitely great experience you can get from doing something, being in the amateurs. And then once you got 300-400 fights under your belt, depending upon your age, and you want to break into the pros, I fully recommend this, and my commission likes to do it. You should start out as an inspector for the athletic commission. So you're working behind the scenes, you get to see all the stuff that goes on behind with the weight cuts and the games with the gloves, problems with the fighters, the trunks, the mouthpieces, you get to see all the players. They get to know you. You get to see the real trainers from the guys who just bought a $50 license to be a trainer. They wear dark glasses, indoor, hair slicked back, two-piece jumpsuit on, and just want to get their face on camera. You get to see all that up front, and you get to establish a relationship with these people. And if you carry yourself as a professional, after learning all that kind of stuff and start shadowing refs and actually get in, they'll know you from when you were an inspector, and the respect you'll get just because the way you treated them and vice versa behind the scenes. You walk in with a level of respect that you wouldn't have if you didn't do it. So I recommend it fully, and there's no place to learn like being an inspector. They are privileged to everything. It's a great position to take.
Interesting. So let's go back to boxing controversies and hit on February 1990, Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson, which is not the original long count, but the more modern day version of the long count. 8th round, last 10 seconds. Mike Tyson's backed up against the ropes. Douglas is pressing the action. Mike lands a right uppercut, drops Douglas on the seat of his pants. And the contention was that Octavio Moran gave Buster Douglas a long count. And that was just by, somebody sit down with a timer. Again, it was Don King or whoever had a timer. And they said as soon as his butt hit the canvas, he started the timer. And then ended up being 12 or 13 seconds. What's your take on that?
Was it 12 to 13 seconds before he was up or before he said box again? Probably before he was up.
Before he was up.
Okay, but also Octavio was distracted. I think Tyson came out of the corner and he turned around to put him in the corner. Let me tell you something about Don King. Don King is Don King. He's a legend in this sport. But, he's Don King, and he doesn't know everything, and he thinks he does. And I had an incident with him. So I did Berman Stavern against Chris Arreola. Yep. And we, in the rules meeting, and we do the weigh-ins, and my boss out here in California, Andy Foster, and this commission, they like when the referee who's ref in the fight, if it's a world championship fight, or even if it's just a very highly touted main event, they like us to do the rules meeting. For me, it's great because it establishes a relationship if I don't know the fighters, and it also helps me establish control because I'm coming in and telling them what they can expect and what the rules we're going to be following are. Anyway, that being aside, while we were doing this rules meeting, I was going over the rules, and I clearly stated to everyone there, guys, if you knock your opponent down, I'm going to send you to a neutral corner. Stay there until I say the word box. I was in the middle of my count, and at 4 or 5, I was really worried about Arreola. He took a hell of a shot. So I'm watching the fighter and I'm counting, and about 4 or 5 or 6, I flip my head around to make sure the guy's in the neutral corner or the furthest corner. This time, I was so concerned about Arreola's condition, I never did it. I just stayed with my eyes on him to make sure he was able to intelligently defend himself. And when I got to 9, he was up. You okay? Can you continue? You want whatever? Made him wipe his gloves. I kept control of him with one hand. And when I turned, Stavern was right here in my face. So I kind of gently pushed Arreola back, and I said, no, you got to go back in the corner. So it took 4 seconds extra, and Don King comes in the ring, and he's MFing me in the ring before the decision. You mother this, you gave him an extra long count. He's screaming at me. And my chief inspector, Mark Relier, was in the ring and caught what was going on. And he ran over to Don King. He goes, shame on you. If you would have came to the goddamn rules meeting yesterday, you would have understood. We follow that rule here. And it's one of the oldest rules in boxing. Stavern should have stayed in his corner. And Don King came over to me after he didn't apologize, but he put his arm on me, and everything was cool. So in this fight, Octavio, if I remember correctly, was distracted momentarily and turned around. And listen, on a regular knockdown in today's society, especially in today's society, you count to 10. And once you reach the count of 10 and complete it, the fighters, if any part of the fighter's body other than the soles of their feet are still on the canvas, it's over.
Yeah.
But if you get to 8 or 9 and he's no longer down, it changes to an assessment. In the old days, they got up. If they beat the count, you wiped their gloves and you said go. So the whole thing took 10 seconds. Now, because the ringside physicians, a lot of them are neurologists, they tell us you just can't throw a lamb to the slaughter of a lion. You've got to assess their ability to intelligently defend himself by testing their neurological cognitive function. Is their brain talking to it? The lobes of the brain passing messages to each other. Does he understand who he is, where he is, and why he's there? Will he be able to put his hands up, run, hold, take a knee? You know what I'm saying, Doug?
Yeah.
So we do it with a referee's sobriety test. And I'll give you a quick story. Cop is driving down the street. He sees a car driving erratically. That's probable cause to pull the guy over, right?
Yeah.
He goes over to the window. He says, please roll down the window. The guy rolls down the window and he could smell alcohol coming from the car. That's probable cause to get that driver out and see if they're intoxicated or on some kind of controlled substance. Us as a referee, we're watching the progression of damage. We saw how the guy walked into the ring and what was normal, and then he's taking shots and he's falling further and further away due to damage from what's normal. And if he gets his body language when he gets dropped and how he gets, where he gets hit, how he gets hit, the motion of his head, the motion of his body, how he landed, did it slap against the ground, what he had to do to get up, did he have to roll over, get on all fours, did he actually have to use the ropes, a million things, gives us the probable cause to make that referee sobriety test. So in this case, Octavio got distracted by the other court, by Tyson. It took a few extra seconds, but it was totally within the normal realm of what boxing does. And now it takes a lot longer, and justifiably so.
So being a 101 underdog, Buster Douglas still deserves the win, and no controversy really. Yeah.
No controversy. Hey, there's always going to be someone making controversy. Now there's everything is crazy now. When people say my uniform, my costume was too heavy,
it's too big.
His gloves were had something in them, or you name it, it's there. It's just social media.
But again, it feeds off of it, because you can take one small clip, blow it up, zoom in on somebody's glove, and it's a little bit malformed, and suddenly there's a conversation around it.
And it could be a glove from some other fight 3 fights ago, but they're only showing you the glove. It's just people love. Think about it. The guy sitting at home in Iowa, who's 400 pounds and he loves boxing, and he don't have an athletic bone in his body, but he wants to be part of this. Now he's got everybody actually answering him on the internet. So he or she feels, wow, look, I'm important or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm always amazed. We'll post something and then some of the commentary just goes off the charts, and it's like, oh, I'm sometimes like, dude, you don't have something better to do?
Sometimes people don't. And let me tell you something. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I'm human. There's things that I miss. There's things that I misinterpret based upon where I am at the time and stuff like that. But it's acceptable. And if you want to get into replay, I'll start by saying I absolutely 1,000% love and support and wish everyone would do instant replay. Because what I have learned when we have used replay, when I've made an error, when I've made a mistake, and then replays help us to get it right. No one's mad at me for making a mistake. They're extremely happy that we got it right and we move on. Right. Just like in football, just like in everything else. We don't
is that being discussed on a widespread level?
There are many places in the United States that are using it. We use it in California. Nevada uses it all the time. Here in California, we use it when the promoter makes it available. The ABC now Association of Boxing Commissions, who make the unified rules and really have a lot of good influence on the smaller sanctioning bodies as well, not sanctioning bodies, states and tribal communities that hold boxing and everybody all over the world. They're trying to put the correct verbiage in that they're recommending that everyone institute instant replay. It's in the process. The big thing is in a small commission and a small promoter, who does the financial burden fall on? But
Right.
look, you and I got Ring cameras probably on your house, right?
Yeah.
Me too. It's not expensive. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that these guys, if they make a $2,000 investment, it's going to last for 10 years for them. Put them up on the ring aprons, or whoever's filming it for the stream feed. They buy an extra monitor and get that ability to do the replay. I think it can only make boxing better.
So how will they be encouraging commissions to use these? Let's say, will it be somebody watching the monitor ringside that if something comes up of question, they'll call it, they'll draw attention to it? Or if you're not sure about something, you're using it to see that instant replay? In what way is this going to be incorporated?
Both.
Okay.
So like Nevada, they have an instant review officer. J80 is the current instant review officer or instant replay officer, official. In California, the only one that's allowed to make the decision is the referee in the ring. But I trust my chief inspector or my assistant executive officer, my executive officer, there are quite a few refs I do trust, some I don't, to make the correct decision.
Yeah.
So what they will do is, if we have a problem with it, we'll ask for a replay, and they'll get the feedback, and they'll turn the monitor towards you in the ring, and you can make the decision. Here in California, in Nevada, they trust Jane 80, so he will look at it, and they do it in two ways. If you called something a knockdown, and maybe you were too close, you didn't see their feet get tripped up, Jay will put a yellow light on the ring apron to let everybody know it's going to review. And if it's the other way around, the referee decides he wasn't sure, he could say, Jay, go to review. And then they'll pull up the feed. And then after the round's over, or if there's a break in the action or something like that, they'll tell the referee and they'll change the call. They've done it many times in Vegas, and we've done it a few times in California.
It's all from an officiating standpoint. Like a coach in the corner couldn't say, that was not a low blow, I want to dispute that.
Yes, he could.
Oh, he could. Okay.
The referee feels that it was. He asked them to go to review here in California. In Nevada, the review officer will pull it up and make that decision. They get a right to do it. They don't get a right to stall.
Yeah.
But they get a right to do it without interrupting the action. So the ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions, right now is putting verbiage in, because some commissions follow ABC strictly. So they're putting verbiage in highly recommending that the commissions do it.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that was going down.
That's why we're talking.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, I hope more people adopt it sooner rather than later.
It's really a great tool. Hey, look, even when it makes us look wrong, as long as we get it right, everybody's forgiving. It's been my experience.
Yeah. Well, if a fighter's career is at stake, he'll want to get it right,
Yeah, I mean, Doug, I got video after video of two guys coming together, and they're both throwing right hands, or one guy's moving in and he's throwing a right hand, and the head is in front of the fist. And the commentators, and I'm not knocking them on this situation, but the commentators are all saying, "Oh, we threw a beautiful right hand, and down goes so and so."
Right.
And they play it back, and the head did it. The head knocked the guy down. I got multiple videos like that I show to try to tell the guys, be open to suggestion. If someone's telling you this, let's get it right. No one expects the referee to be 100%. I mean, can you imagine if referees are in the 95 to 97 percentile on everything they're watching? Oh my God,
right.
They're a baseball player. Can you imagine? They'd be hitting 9-something,
Well, and a referee can't be on every side. Sometimes it's just circumstance happens. You're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and you don't see it from that perspective, that vantage point.
it's dynamic. It's changing. You know, you want to be right between them, but sometimes they're moving, so you end up behind them. Right. And when they're in a corner, if you pick a side and then they end up on that side, you can't get around to the other side fast enough. It's impossible. So you do your best to see the action, and it's you can't be perfect. No one can.
But a huge job. You kind of set up the last fight I want to talk about. One of the biggest controversies in boxing history, I think. I think you said it was like the referee sobriety test. I want to go back to 1990 of March 1990, Meldrick Taylor versus Julio Cesar Chavez. A classic battle, back and forth. It was the epitome of your boxer versus puncher. Although Taylor did decide to stand and throw with Chavez on occasion. I mean, his hand speed was excellent. His footwork was amazing. And Chavez was just his typical aggressive, workmanlike fashion. You know, him just coming forward the whole fight. At the end of the 11th, there was little doubt, I think, among most boxing historians or spectators that Taylor had taken about 3/4 of the fight. He'd won about 3/4 of the fight. So going into it, most people were under the perception that Chavez needed a knockout to win. At the 24-second mark in the last round, the 12th round, Chavez landed a right hand on Meldrick Taylor, dropped him right in the corner. Richard Steele came in, assessed the damage, and with 4 or 5 seconds left, waved the fight off, costing Meldrick Taylor the fight, the championship of the world. In that situation, again, not to call Richard Steele the carpet because it's been discussed over and over and over, whether that was the right call or not. Let's go back to what exactly you would have been looking for in that situation, and would you have factored the idea that, oh, there's only 4 seconds. They can hardly meet in the middle of the ring and exchange punches if there's only 4 seconds left. So Taylor is probably safe to go the distance for this to go to the scorecards.
So you're asking me, does time on the clock matter, basically?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let me tell you, I've had the unfortunate experience to be in the exact same situation Richard was in, and that's one of those fights I wish I could take back.
Oh, really?
I did the same thing Richard Steele did. I don't know how I do know how he feels about it from what he said, but me personally, I like to step back and take a more global view on it. And if I could do it over again, I would have let the fight finish. But I do want to tell you, so here's what's going through a referee's mind. By the way, in the Steele fight, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember clearly. Didn't he get dropped twice right at the end? Or was it only once?
I think it was just once, but he did get staggered. I don't know if there was a second knockdown. It was just one knockdown. I believe, again, I'm going off of memory here too. That was 1990, many years ago. So
in that situation, here's the pros and cons. Here's the yin and the yang of what the guy should consider. So he got dropped. He got up. Richard was assessing him, and then whether there was I don't think there was 4 seconds left. I think there was about 2 seconds left. So the argument is he wouldn't have taken any more damage because if Chavez was in the neutral corner, if Richard said box, he couldn't have run across the ring fast enough in 2 seconds to get to Chavez and Taylor and hurt him.
Yep.
So I asked myself, what's best for boxing? So the way the fight ended turned out to be so terribly controversial. And again, this happened to me, and I wish I would have done it different. So I'm not criticizing Richard Steele, and hindsight's always 20/20. I'm just saying, what's best for boxing?
Right.
So if he stopped the fight and Chavez won, and a black eye came on boxing because Taylor won 11 plus rounds in that fight. The other side of it is Taylor took a really bad beating. He was never the same afterward.
No.
And
which was shown in their rematch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Richard hadn't stopped it and Chavez lost, they still would have got a rematch.
Yeah.
And it would have been less controversy, and the same thing would have happened. So they're talking about reducing the controversy and what would be better for boxing. So, but the other side of it is this. In that fight, when that bell rang, whether they stopped it or not, who would you rather be? The guy who won 11 rounds or the guy who, at the end, kicked the shit out of the other guy? You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah,
still a little
yeah,
part of boxing.
yeah,
So I think that would have been a better controversy if the fight would have ended without the knockout for Chavez, and then people would have been saying, if that, I want to be Chavez, I wouldn't want to be the guy who won 11
yeah,
rounds, and then they get another fight to settle it, and then they settle it, which Chavez did, rather than the way it did. Hindsight's 2020, and I'm only commenting because it happened to me, and I wish I could change it. It's
yeah.
been years for me, but I wish I could change it because the guy was not going to take any more damage,
Right.
and I feel that he made it to his feet. He wasn't going to take any more damage. I've got to give him credit for making it back to his feet and stuff like that. And the reason I stopped it personally was because that other guy put him in that condition. And if this fight had any more time on the clock, I would have never let it go on.
Yeah.
So what you're asking us to do, what you're saying is, if you would have never let him go on, and if there was time left on the clock, why aren't you doing that now? And that's the controversy. And that's what I did, because I said he deserved the win. It wasn't because I was worried about his safety. I said he did his job. This guy, I would never allow him to continue. So people look at it a different way, and it's difficult. And with all that, looking back now, I wish I would have let it end, go to the scorecards. Those guys would have had an immediate rematch, and it would have been better for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was dramatic. It certainly added to Chavez's mystique.
Yes.
No doubt. Yeah.
And it hurt.
So,
I think it hurt his son a little bit.
What's that?
I think it hurt Chavez Jr.
In what
See,
way?
he thought he could always be like his dad and coast for 10, 11 rounds and then come back and knock the guy out, you know?
Yeah. Doesn't quite work like that.
You got to be Julio Sr.
Yeah, for
do
real.
that.
For real. Well, I think we talked about it last time a little bit, but as we close here, I want to bring up Soul Arbiter again, just so that people understand what you're doing out there, what you're doing to make the sport better, to improve on what you're, not only what the judges are doing, but just on the sport as a whole. Just talk a little bit about what that is and what that entails.
So we found that a lot of commissions and a lot of places around the world don't have a depth of knowledge with experienced referees who have a lot of fights. And people are always coming to us and saying, hey, how would I handle this situation? How would I handle that situation? And the commission came to us and said, you guys are getting old. You need to start training some good referees and put together a class called Soul Arbiter, because that's what we are in the ring. The only one able to make a decision on the fight, you know, who's fouls and stopping the fights or letting them continue with a Soul Arbiter. And what we're doing is we're breaking down, like I have Russell Mora, who you know, and Tom Taylor, and between us we have over 2,500 fights that we've done, and at least 10%, 250 of them are world title bouts. And Doug, I got to tell you, any referee that tells you they don't make mistakes is just lying. We all make mistakes. We all look. If you're not looking at your performances and saying, I wish I could have done that instead of this, and the next time applying it, you're really not growing. The words always and never should not be in your vocabulary, because there's just things are different every time.
Yeah.
So anyway, we put together this class, and it's a way for current referees to up their level, because we give them experience that they probably never looked at before because of all of our mistakes. Yeah. You don't have to make all the mistakes that we made. You can still learn by listening. You know, don't do this in this situation or do that in this situation. And it's a 3-day course, and we're thinking about even changing it around a little bit, make it a little longer. 2 days in a classroom of 10 hours of philosophy and practical application of the mechanics. We show them, like I said, the films and all that stuff. And then we show them what the better outcome would be. We get them up in the class and we try to develop neural pathways. We actually walk through the mechanics. And the 3rd day is in the ring with professional fighters. They don't know what's coming, but it's all of the situations we talked about the day before. Guy gets hit, he's on the ground, he gets hit while he's down. What do you do? And it's different for different fights. You know, a guy gets hit and he's on the ground, he gets hit and he's holding his body, right? And then he gets hit in the head and he just stays there, he's still holding his body. What put him down was the punch to the body, and that's why he's still down. So you don't have to take points right away and all this stuff. And we teach them in detail of what to look for. And then we critique them with, you know, constructive criticism. And then they get to do it again and again and again in that last day and change what they did and develop the correct way to do it. And also learn how to visualize, see these situations, walk through them in your home. We lay out a plan for them to practice and get better weeks they don't have a fight, and a preparation plan so they're in the zone when they get to the arena and they get in the ring. Look, there's sometimes, because the shows, I don't get to work for like 2 months. Then I'll work 4 times over one weekend. So on an average, I'll do, you know, whatever, but you can't walk to the arena after not reffing for 2 months, have a hot dog and step in the ring. You're not going to be effective. So you've got to prepare yourself and be in the zone. So the first second of the first round, you're ready for a double knockdown, which I have a video on of a referee on an ESPN fight, the first 10 seconds of the first round, double knockdown.
Crazy.
So it happens.
Yeah.
And you can't say, well, I wasn't warmed up yet.
Yeah,
You know?
it's happened many times.
Right.
Well, there's always going to be a boxing controversy, Jack. Hopefully things like Soul Arbiter and guys like you that are out there doing the hard work and taking on the huge responsibility that is the third man in the ring, hopefully those will be mitigated and we'll see less of those over time.
You know, I hope so too. I would just like to get everything more standardized.
Yeah.
And I'd like to educate the crowd, which I want to thank you for helping us educate, you know, the casual fan or even, you know, the heavy duty boxing fan to at least know. Now, hopefully they understand what a low blow is and other things that we might have talked about today, and it'll make for a better sport. And, you know, in baseball, football, everything's somewhere printed, posted on the internet so people understand the rules.
Yeah.
We got to do the same thing with boxing. We've got to educate everybody so there'll be better sport boxing fans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, I've learned stuff today and at least and got some different perspective on things, and hopefully the viewers and our listeners have as well.
I hope so too, and thank you for the opportunity. I always love chatting with you. So I appreciate it very much. And I want to say, I'm going to send you some pictures. We took a picture. Doug, you were good enough to have Title sponsor us with some giveaways in a swag bag.
Yeah.
We have the big Title bags, and I got a picture of about 55, 60 people this time sitting with the Title bag, and I'll be sending it to you today. I'll send you a few in an email. So thank you again for your sponsorship and your support with this. Really appreciate it.
We love being
trinkets too. They love it.
Well, we love being a part of what you're doing out there.
Well, thank you.
Jack, I know we'll see you in the ring again here soon. Again,
next
thank
weekend.
you. There you go. All right. We'll be on the lookout. Thank you, Jack.
All right. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our Title Boxing YouTube page.